Welcome, everybody. We'll just give a minute to let people come in, but I am shocked how many people in here. But it's so lovely to see all of these people. We should have a really informative session this evening. Good evening to you, Naomi.
Hello, good night.
Hi, good evening.
Good night. I am so excited for this meeting.
I'm glad. Well, since we have such a bumper crowd, I think we should just go ahead and start and let people join when they can. So I'm Natasha Nunez, and I am one of the founders of the group Women Warriors and Menopause on Facebook. And this group has, Jenny, you can mute yourself.
Sure.
This group was started with some schoolmates of mine. I think I saw Wendy on the chat. Some schoolmates of mine who are obviously all around the same age, and we, having discussed some of the things that we were going through, we said, well, this had to be menopause related, and not being able to find any information locally about menopause, perimenopause, we decided let's try and start
31 on.
Let's try and start. And just a reminder to everybody in the chat, please mute yourself. So we decided to start this Facebook group and to form a community around this issue of menopause, because many of us, Lisa, can you mute yourself, please?
Sorry.
That's okay. So yes, we decided to start this community and share what we were going through in the hope that people would of like mind and body that we as women going through this transition could.
Hi, good night. Good night. You all hear me? Yeah, I still in South. So you all excuse the noise and the background. I'm at a funeral.
All right, you can mute yourself, Jillian.
Yes.
It's another call for everyone in the chat to mute themselves, please. Let me wait until everybody has done that before I continue. Deborah, mute yourself, please. So whoever's on iPhone, mute yourself, please. And Amanda, please mute yourself. And I understand people are joining. So those who have just joined, I'll wait until those who have just joined, please mute yourself when you join. There are two people, one person on iPhone, and Amanda, please mute yourself. All right. Chantal, put yourself on mute, please. All right, thank you. All right, so we decided to start the group, and we did that in January or February this year. Jillian, you correct me if I'm wrong. We started off by doing some programs on my radio program that I co-host with my husband, Iron Dependency, and we had such a good response that we decided again to try to build this community, to share information and make it a safe space for women to ask questions and to learn, because every day we learn something on that group. So I am in another group with, I'm going to call her menopause coach, Indira. She probably won't like that, but I'm in another group with a health and fitness expert out of Canada, and Indira is also an assistant to that menopause coach. And we were trying to find ways to involve medical professionals in our conversations, because none of us are medical professionals, and we've heard so many stories from members of our group of people who have gone to their GP or their gynecologist and have not been given good treatment. They haven't been advised properly. Their description of their symptoms has been ignored, or their symptoms have been treated, and there was no discussion about the menopause and the impact that is having on their bodies. So we are very pleased that Indira recommended Dr. Singh to come.
In the recording.
Lisa, please mute yourself.
Yeah, yours, right?
Lisa?
Perfect.
Lisa, can you mute yourself, please? We're hearing you. All right. So again, we are pleased to welcome. I don't want to take up too much more time because our time is limited. We have 40 minutes. So this is a reminder to, when we do get cut off after 40 minutes, you can rejoin with the same link that you used to join originally. So I'm going to hand over now to Indira, who is going to share her experience with Dr. Singh, and then we'll go straight into Dr. Singh's presentation. Hit your mute buttons. Thank you, Farah, for that reminder. And you can, if you have any questions to ask Dr. Singh while he's doing his presentations, you can either raise your hand in the chat by going to the reactions and raise your hand, or you can type your question in the chat and we'll get back to it. So Indira, over to you.
Thank you, Natasha. Thanks, Natasha and Jillian, for starting this group. And good night, good morning, good afternoon to anyone, wherever you're listening in the world. Because I know we have over 100 people that would have registered. So thanks for being here. So earlier today, I would have shared a video in the menopause group that we have. That is the Women Warriors and a Menopause group. So if you haven't checked out the video, you can go look at it, where I'm sharing my perimenopause journey with you and the steps that I am taking. So part of my journey would have included making an appointment and going to see my OBGYN, which is the lovely Dr. Dev that we have here tonight with us, chatting with us. I had such a good experience with him that I said to Natasha that we have to have him here to chat with the ladies, especially because I like the fact that he was very receptive and open to all my questions, and I didn't feel rushed at all. I felt like I could have asked him anything, and everything was answered accordingly, and a plan was made, which is need to do blood works, I need to do mammogram, etc. And then I would come back to him to have a plan where we would discuss all the results of what's going on with me. And what I like is when things are science-based, we can make informed decisions. So I like that I was able to know what is going to come. Just to conclude as well, that I'm in perimenopause, so he didn't dismiss any of my concerns. He totally understood. And also, because of the fact that he is in South, I like the fact that I don't have to go up the highway all the way to North to access care. So I know some of you would have been from North as well. So I really wanted to have him here to chat with you. So I'll hand you over to Dr. Dev now. Just a note, if it is the video clicks off, because we are using free Zoom, please click back the same link and we will get back in once we, if it cuts off, okay? So I'll hand you over to Dr. Dev now. Guys, reminder again, please mute. I'm seeing one or two people still unmuted. So I'll hand you over to Dr. Dev.
Hello, good night, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Do I need to put this? We have about 47. Right. I'm a little bit intimidated because we have about almost 50 perimenopausal women or menopausal women. So I'm presuming there are no other men here. But just very, very briefly, because I know we in terms of time, we might be a little bit short. I've been an OB/GYN for about 25 odd years. There's about 13 of which were in the UK. And one of the things I think, having practiced abroad, somebody needs to mute, Joanna. Yeah, sorry about that. One of the things about practicing abroad was that the way the menopause was managed was something that it was taken very seriously, because it occupies at least 1/3, if not a half, of a woman's life. And coming back here for the past 10 years, what I noticed was that there wasn't much consideration for the older population of women. So what I've been trying to do is sort of raise awareness, and this is a good opportunity to do that. But what I want to do today is it's more of a chat as opposed to lecturing to you all. This is not a medical lecture. This is an opportunity for you all to ask questions, to sort of, any sort of things that are going through your mind. So all I'm going to do is just sort of trigger those things and give you an overview of, what exactly this menopause story is about, and then what we can offer here, which unfortunately is very limited and needs to be addressed. But I'm certain that what you take home with you would hopefully help you in terms of improving your quality of life. That's the objective here, is to make sure we can give you the best possible, life with regards to this transition that you're going through. All right? Okay, I think Joanna needs to probably still mute, if that's correct. But I'll start sharing my screen. Can you all see this? Good. Thank you, Natasha. Right. I chose pink, naturally. And what I'm actually going to talk about is, like I said, this is a chat. All right. So I don't mind too much if there are certain questions along the way. Once it's not too many, we can leave that towards the end. But I tend to like to get an idea of my audience as well. So I'll ask you all a couple of questions, and you're more than welcome to unmute and answer along the way. So it is a chat on menopause. I'll talk a little bit of what it is. And one of the questions that, when I was sort of training and stuff, is you must always learn to ask why things are happening, why this is happening. And one of the questions is, why do women actually have to go through this, right? Men are spared generally, right? We have prostates, but we have to live with that. But, it was something that I started looking into and reading. Why should women actually experience this sort of issue with regards to 1/3 of their life? Very briefly, I'll just touch on the hormones, in particular estrogen. And the menopause itself is a phase of your life, but it brings with it symptoms and signs. And I use the word endure deliberately because I think it's something that you all do endure, right? It's not something pleasant by any means for quite a lot of women. Then we'll go briefly into the pillars of menopause management, nothing exhaustive, but these same pillars apply to pretty much any chronic disease for that matter, right? And then we'll touch on things like with regards to what works in replacing some of these hormones, because there are lots of different things, or you hear all sorts of different things. Certain ones work, certain they're not sure, a lot of it is not tested. And then of course, whatever we try to do in terms of trying to alleviate symptoms and stuff, especially when it comes to using hormones, there are always perils and pitfalls that we have to be aware of, right? So off we go. So this is an open question, right? And do you all know who these two gentlemen are? Any idea? Anybody can answer if you just unmute.
I know they're actors.
They're actors.
Names.
Right. So the first one with the glasses is Mr. Al Pacino, who is all of 83. and the other chap is Robert De Niro. They're two of the best male actors, probably. Any idea what they have in common as of this year? Anybody sort of could hazard a guess?
Have they both had children with their partners?
Yes. Right? So the good Mr. Pacino at age 83, I think his girlfriend is probably in her 20s, early 30s, had a baby in June at 83. And Mr. De Niro had a little girl, G, I think, and he's all of 79 with his partner, who's about in her 30s, in May of this year. So I have a question to you all, given we have roughly 50 women. How do you all feel about having a baby at 79 and 83? Is that something you all would enjoy?
No, not for me.
Nope.
I don't think so. Not for me.
Absolutely.
Me
not.
either.
No way.
Yeah,
Right.
you need a youth to be running around, kids.
Right, actually, you touched on a very good point there. So what is interesting, nature in her infinite wisdom, right, decided women had to stop at some point. Not so, all right? Women, they could not be physically able, right, to have babies into their 70s and 80s. And it had to stop at some point. So whereas men, you know, do not experience this and can actually have this sort of, well, I don't know if it's an opportunity, but I think even at age 70, having a baby, it's not going to be easy. But nature did something in order to prevent that from happening. Now, this is another question I'm going to pose to you all. I think you should recognize one of these two women, right? But do you all know who this is? Can you recognize
Jennifer
it?
Lopez.
J-Lo.
Yes.
Yes.
J-Lo.
So that's J-Lo. And do you know how old J-Lo is now?
55.
She's my
or
age,
54.
54.
So this, I didn't take one of her nice sort of picture. This is Jennifer Lopez first thing in the morning when she gets up. All right. And at age 54, this is how she looks, right? Just pulling stuff off the internet. There's the other woman, it's just a picture of the internet, is another 54-year-old, basically. And there's a stark difference, basically, between them, right? But these are two 54-year-olds. So the effect of the menopause on women, right, it differs greatly. And there are things, I mean, to a certain extent, yes, Jennifer Lopez is a celebrity. She would have had all sorts of things done, perhaps to a certain extent. But what you start to notice, right, as you enter the menopause, is that your skin starts to change. And you have, across all of medicine, your skin is actually a very telling sort of organ that tells you when things are happening. Is that me? Right. So this one is a bit blurred, right? These are two other 54-year-old women, right? So all the pictures you've seen, these four women, they're all 54 years old. And just to make the point about your skin as well, and touching on it, the one on the left is actually a smoker. And smoking is one of the worst things next to alcohol, actually, but we'll touch on that, right? And the effect on older women, it is more stark. So you see the wrinkles, you see all the sort of the lines and you know, the bags under the eyes and stuff. But the other picture, right, that woman is also 54. This is the one on the right with the long blonde hair. But this is after 14 months of HRT, right? So hormone replacement, right, is basically giving back the estrogen which has been lost. And you can see what a stark sort of difference it makes to the skin, right? So estrogen in particular is such, it's a hormone that makes a woman a woman. It makes your hair nice and soft, it makes your skin nice and supple and soft, and it affects pretty much every single organ and every single cell in your body, right? So what exactly is the menopause that we are talking about and why we're here today? The menopause, by definition, refers to the cessation of periods, meaning your periods have stopped for a year. You don't know which period is going to be your last as you're going into this transition. So it's only defined after you've gone a year without seeing a single period. So if you have basically gone 7 months and then bled, you restart the clock, right? So from a medical point of view, the date of your last period, once you've crossed a year, is defined as your final menstrual period. There is no cure for the menopause. It is a phase of your life. What we're trying to alleviate is this term, which is called the climacteric. And the climacteric refers to the symptoms, right, that occur around the time of the menopause. So you notice on either side of that, it sort of overlaps a bit with what we call the perimenopause, which is on either side. And then they use the term, of course, postmenopause, meaning after that last period, until you die, you remain in the menopause, essentially. So what we actually, although we're using the word menopause, there are other terms, and what we're actually trying to fix or address, or improve, I should say, right, is the quality of life that occurs during the climacteric. So we're coming to that, yep. Now, I was trying to figure out, again, why it is. Anybody has any idea or any thoughts on why it is you all actually have to go through this? Why do women, right, actually have a menopause? Any sort of ideas? Ever thought about it? Anybody? Welcome.
Is it that is it the time when your ovaries no longer, how should I say,
They're not functioning anymore.
Yes. So
right.
it's just for your body to go through that next phase?
That's right. So that's the how. So that is what happens. So why is it, all right, women's ovaries shut down, but not Mr. Pacino and De Niro and their testes? That's a bit unfair, isn't it? Especially if the ovaries are making such a good hormone. So
is it because of testosterone?
No. They shut down, they basically stop functioning, essentially. But the question is why, right? That's what I was trying to figure out. Why did Mother Nature decide that women in their 50s or mid to late 40s, right? Why did the ovaries just stop? Say, okay, we're not going to make any eggs anymore. We're going to stop making estrogen. We're not going to continue. So that is what I was trying to sort of figure out. And interestingly, go ahead.
Can I say something?
Say, sure.
Probably it's nature's way of giving women a second life back to, enjoy life now.
Okay, actually yes, in a certain way, right? But it also makes you a little bit irritable, can't sleep, right? Can put you into depression. All of those things fall into that.
When does that time stop though?
Right. So, but here's what I came across, which I actually learned myself in sort of preparing a little bit for this. There is something back in the 60s where they sort of pondered this, all the clever people. And there is something called the grandmother hypothesis, right? So this is why we think, right, nature does what it does. If you were to be reproductive for your entire life till age 80, and the average life expectancy for women is actually 84. Can you imagine what it would be like having babies 60, 65, 72, 85? The sheer burden in terms of the health and all of that with regards to a pregnancy, it's all exacerbated basically. So this grandmother hypothesis actually has to do with the fact that the grandmother, right, the ovaries shut down, and the grandmother is then able to look after, right, the children of her daughter. And in doing so, it allows for the daughter to continue to have more children, and it allows for the family basically to expand. Nature wants to grow, nature wants to procreate. So if you could imagine, for those of you who have had children, that when this baby came home with you, your husband or your partner was pretty much useless, as I was. But it's your mom that came to you and showed you how to look after this baby, how to bathe this baby, how to soothe this baby, etc., even how to breastfeed, etc. So nature, in its infinite wisdom, found a mechanism of stopping women from continuing to procreate, unlike men. So it gave them the opportunity to look after the children and raise the children. So that is the hypothesis that has been put forward as to why. So some may think it's some sort of, evil or some, God punishing, whatever. But this is actually nature trying to protect us and protect ourselves. It just probably needed a little bit more to work out exactly how to do things. But the purpose behind this climacteric and all the symptoms and everything else has a far greater purpose than we think, right? So I don't like to be technical, and I don't like to read. So basically, how hormones work, the key here has to do with this estrogen. And like I said, this is what makes a woman a woman. But we use the word estrogen, and we have to understand that it's an umbrella term because there are different types of estrogen. When we're young, right, I'm saying here, when we're young women, the type of estrogen is called estradiol. So that is in the early stages from puberty through our 20s, 30s, and 40s. And that is before you get pregnant. When you get pregnant, there is a different type of estrogen. So the first one is called estradiol. But when you get pregnant, the placenta makes a very, very, very potent estrogen called estriol. And of course, when you deliver and the placenta is delivered, the estriol goes away and estradiol comes back. But what happens is that when you reach about 40, the function of the ovaries basically starts to wane, in the sense that you're no longer producing that amount of eggs and that amount of hormone. So nature gave us the opportunity to basically have children, usually 20s, 30s, yes. In fact, from the literature, the best time to actually have children is probably between 18 and 24, statistically. With how we work now and how women have careers, etc., that has been pushed back into their 30s, and now we've had quite a few women in their 40s still conceiving. What you all have to remember is, as long as you're having a period, you can get pregnant. Because I'm sure you read all about, oh, I know somebody who's 46, I know somebody who's 50 who had a baby, one is 52. So generally speaking, as long as you're having a period and there's no contraception, you have to be aware that you can still get pregnant. From a medical point of view, we lock off that at 55. We don't get very many, very, very rare. A woman would spontaneously get pregnant after 55, right? So estradiol is the main hormone, and that starts to fall. And the average age of the menopause statistically is 51 years and 7 months. So between 51 and 52, right? But the symptoms actually can start from 40, and they persist, right, as much as 60. So that's where we're going to focus on things. There are some women who, for whatever reason, right, it could just, unknown in a lot of cases, some of them might have had chemoradiotherapy for cancers when they were young, but less than 40 is considered a premature menopause. So if you start having hot flushes at 35 and stuff, that needs to be investigated, and we have to figure out what is going on. Now, let's see. This is the only technical slide I have, so I apologize a little bit for this. The estrogen, like I said, influences every single cell in the body. So at the level of the brain, it actually prevents inflammation, it modulates pain, and it helps with memory. That's why when estrogen levels fall, right, women tend to become a little more forgetful, and it gets a little bit, they can't remember things as well as they normally do. That is one of the effects with regards to the estrogen. All right, it has an influence on the breast. It promotes the breast tissue. Of course, that has a role to play with regards to pregnancy. It has a very, very potent sort of influence on the bones, which is another thing a lot of women need to be aware of. Estrogen promotes the growth of the bone, and it actually prevents them from becoming brittle. So that is a condition called osteoporosis. It's something that affects women later on in life significantly, because if your bones become brittle and you have little falls, you have very severe fractures, like of the wrist, like of the pelvis, and even the strongest bone in the body, which is the femur. So that is one of the big things that has to be part of your preventative screening in terms of later on in life. It influences your muscles as well and your joints. So a lot of women in the menopause end up with a lot of joint pain, even muscle weakness, and that is something estrogen has a part to play. It has a protective effect on your heart. So you realize the longer you have estrogen circulating, the better, right? Since it has this protective effect, right? So those who go into menopause earlier, let's say in the early 40s, would have lost about 10 years of good estrogen protecting their heart. So they become at risk for heart disease. So you have to be sort of screened for that. Vasculature is a big word for blood vessels, right? And this estrogen actually prevents the buildup of plaque in the arteries as well. So again, a very positive effect in terms of preventing heart disease and heart attacks. It regulates body fat, and this is it's a catch-22 situation, because it promotes the deposition of fat to a certain extent. And if you gain weight, that is not necessarily a good thing later on in life. That brings its own set of problems. So estrogen is one of those hormones where too much of a good thing is bad, because if you have excessive amounts, it affects the breast, changes the tissue to breast cancer, it affects the lining of the womb, changes the lining of the womb into precancer and cancer. And ovaries help stimulate the growth of developing eggs. That's more early on in life, basically. So the signs and the symptoms of menopause. This is where it varies. And I was reading some articles, and I actually saw one article that said there were about over 100 symptoms of the menopause, right? So it affects, we talk about the main ones, but it literally affects every single organ, every single cell in the body. And it starts, if we do a top to toe, your hair starts becoming thin, your hair starts falling out, and I know that's a nightmare for a lot of women, right? Especially when you have nice, long, beautiful hair all your life, and then all of this starts falling off. The skin is affected to a great extent. I'm sure quite a few of you all might have experienced itchy sort of skin, becoming very dry. You have to use a lot more moisturizer, etc. The estrogen also influences something called the hypothalamus in the brain, which is a temperature regulating center in the brain. And you experience these sort of very strange things called hot flushes or hot flashes. And I had the experience, I didn't have a flash, but I had on Sunday gone, with the heat that we've been having, it was debilitating to the point where you cannot function. You just have to lie down in an air conditioned room with fans on you, that sort of thing. So there are women who might be at work, right, in a cool air-conditioned office and stuff, and experience this wave of heat, right, that comes over them, and they cannot literally think straight because it is so bad. And it can last a few minutes, and it goes, and for some people it can last a good 10-15 minutes, and it comes throughout the day, and that in itself can be quite bad. It occurs in about 80% of women. Many of them suffer in silence, and probably only 1/3 actually seek help when it's particularly bad. The same happens at night with the temperature regulation, and you start to sweat despite the AC, and you get up with all your sheets basically soaked, right? And again, that becomes very uncomfortable. Some women have breast pain, all right? It affects the heart, and you start getting palpitations. The heartbeat becomes irregular because, remember, estrogen had a role with regards to regulating that. It affects your gut. You tend to be predisposed to constipation and problems there. And one of the things estrogen does primarily has to do with the reproductive system and the genital and urinary systems. It makes all the tissues down there very dry. So what happens is your bladder becomes very dry and irritated And that causes frequent UTIs, causes you to want to go more often, and it causes significant problems with dryness of the vagina. And that is one of the big sort of issues, because that affects your sexual health, your sexual life. If it's particularly dry at the point of entry and penetration, you get lots of little tears. They call micro cuts, micro tears. And that causes pain, that predisposes to infection, that predisposes to bleeding. And that can be quite miserable, because it actually damages the relationship you have with your partner. This point in your life, in your 40s, 50s, and going even further on, you should have a very, very good sex life. In fact, you shouldn't be hampered by things like this. Joint pains, osteoporosis, that comes in, we touched on that. Even your nails are affected, they get more brittle, they're not as healthy as before. But all the other cognitive things start to come into play, and I'm sure some of you all have sort of experienced this. You're generally very tired, you get up very tired, you feel dizzy, you're irritable, you quarrel with your partner a bit more than usual, headaches come at irregular times. It's easy to sort of fall into depression because of this, because your quality of life is affected. You're gaining some weight, you have the mood swings, trouble sleeping. All of these things are part and parcel of what the menopause can do. And you could imagine, even if you had half of these things, how debilitating it can be in terms of your quality of life. So,
Doc, if we could just, I just want to make an announcement that if the live does cut off, everyone can rejoin using the same link, or 3 minutes to cut off. Okay, thanks. Thanks for that warning.
Yeah, so it might cut off. So just sort of join back. We'll all join back, all right? If you're happy. So the pillars of the menopause, although this was actually something that I was reading about, wellness pillars for your best menopause. This is such a good sort of infographic of what health should be like. And I know, like Indy and Farah and stuff are here as well. And this is what we're trying to explore now to help women. Nutrition and hydration, that is number one. That anybody with any sort of disease or any sort of illness, right? It must start with nutrition in terms of improving. I can't give you a magic pill, right, that will help with your menopause, and you do not take care of yourself in return. You need to actually build on a foundation of rock, and this is your bedrock that must start. You cannot find any doctor to give you anything or look for any magic pill and expect that to do the work, right? So nutrition and hydration, you must drink a lot of water. I usually say about 2.5 liters on average. Literature says between 2 and 3, depending on your size, etc. Right? Nutrition, the simple rule that I tell everybody, all my patients and stuff when they come to me, is that you eat what you could pick from a tree and pull from the ground. Right? So I have a little thing like that. I'll touch on that just now. Movement is a very nice way of saying exercise without saying exercise. You need to move, right? All throughout the day, whether you have a desk job or not, find an opportunity to walk up and down somewhere. And of course, if you have the opportunity to walk at your home, if you swim, whatever it is, that's what you have to have as part of your daily routine. I cannot stress the importance of sleep enough. And that is one of the cruel things I think about the menopause, if it robs you of sleep, right? Sleep is when our body gets the opportunity to heal. It is when we get to repair ourselves and put ourselves back to normal. If you have disturbed sleep, all right, and that you get up in the morning, your day is not going to be a good day. And we've just gotten accustomed to it. Appropriate supplementation, they touched on this from the point of view of B vitamins. That is something I think all women should have. We have an issue with vitamin D. Vitamin D regulates about 300 reactions within our cells. And the vast majority of people who I do blood tests on, you're talking about 9 out of 10 are vitamin D deficient. And that's us living in a tropical country. And that's because we go from an air-conditioned house to an air-conditioned car to an air-conditioned office to an air-conditioned mall, right? And back to an air-conditioned house.